You are now listening to the Purple Fox Podcast. All right. What's up, everybody? This is Kevin Eze, your host of the Purple Fox Podcast. And today in the foxhole, I have Sebastian M. Betancourt.
Sure, we could go with that.
How do
It's
you-
Sebastian Montoya. I use Betancourt as well, but not like legally.
Oh, okay. All right. So we'll say Sebastian Montoya. That's I like Montoya better,
That's good
actually. um,
That's the name.
he is a Navy veteran, an aerospace machinist apprentice, a Los Angeles expat. We miss you over here, by the way. And now a flourishing Floridian independent who wants money out of politics. He's also a founding member of the Purple Fox Collective, and you can listen to him on the very first episode we did of the Purple Fox Podcast. That was a very good one.
Yes.
About tech and Web3.
Crypto.
Crypto. We actually need to do another one of those, by the way. There's a lot that's gone on since then.
Oh man,
Yeah, it's
so much. Incredible.
Yeah, too much and more. All right, so Sebastian, welcome to the Foxhole. Today we're breaking down Marc Andreessen's "It's Time to Build," the essay he put out in 2020, I believe.
2020.
2020. So Marc Andreessen, the renowned tech venture capitalist, states within his 2020 essay entitled "It's Time to Build" that the U.S. and other Western nations have lost the desire to build. He cites housing, education, manufacturing, and transportation as key sectors of society that have faded in efficiency as a result of this loss in desire. The frustration seems to be the forces within the public and private sector actively fighting or lobbying against the possibility of growth to maintain wealth in the hands of an oligarchic few. I got the sense that Andreessen wants to see the public sector prove that they can be effective instead of just measuring progress by ideology of their attempted projects. It's no secret that established players within the private sector lobby to keep things the same and have an interest in limiting competition. Andreessen believes that there are ways around this cynical regulatory capture that can bring back the building spirit and revive the American dream. So today I have Sebastian here in the Foxhole with me to discuss some of Andreessen's ideas. One way or another, this nation will be rebuilt for the betterment of its people. So, Sebastian, my first question to you is, do you think this country has stagnated in terms of its desire to build? Let's tackle that point first of all.
Yeah, Kevin, man, thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here. It's been a while. I'm now in Florida, and I miss you guys in LA too, man. Well,
we really do miss you out here.
but I definitely miss some people in LA. I don't necessarily miss LA. That's one thing that's really hit for me really hard, especially being in Florida. Of course, I have a lot of family here. So it's a little bit different. Yeah, it's good to be here, man. Fox Collective, let's go. So, yeah, man, I think this is what I wrote down. The first thing I wrote down when you were speaking in the intro, the will to build, right? Look, I think if we understand, right, that our infrastructure is definitely crumbling, I think you can see it in many different factors and facets of our country. And especially since we've had so much time to really pay attention to what's going on in 2020, the pandemic. We have found our way through truths and facts of the way our country is running and the goods and the bads, right? This is outside of just even who is running the country in general, right? Who's in power, for lack of a better word. But I think if you speak to certain people, Man, it sounds really loud. You hear that?
Oh yeah, there's an airplane going overhead. Yeah, let me
Wow,
I'll
that's
do
a
yeah.
great microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So how I was saying is, I think if you speak to the American people and how they feel now, for instance, after we have experienced the supply chain collapse, with months and months and months of waiting, even for like, for instance, how he was speaking about ponchos and the call for ponchos, right, in 2020, right? The way he was saying that, we were getting our masks from China, plain and simple. We were waiting for a lot of goods that we didn't have, that were not available, which created lots of panic, lots of fear in people. And it just started to make us realize that, oh, okay, we're not prepared, not even for the quantity of the people that are here. If you count for like one mask, one person, but really, we needed masks per person. We needed, you know, so many things. Swabs, the swabs for the tests. That's why the tests were backed up, right? We didn't have not the labor, we didn't have the resource, we just didn't have it here for us to immediately act. So I think that opened up a lot of eyes. So if you ask people now, as to where you asked people maybe a few years ago, have we lost the will to build? I think we've gotten very complacent. I think with technology and with innovation, in a sense, um, technology has given us almost like a inflated sense of safety and preparedness. And so now we understand that, okay, we have to build, and we have to build here. We have to start manufacturing here in America. And I think that opinion and that viewpoint is very prevalent now. I am in the aerospace industry now, very different industry than where I was a year ago. And what I see here are the kind of clients that we're getting in the aerospace industry, not just the space race here in the Space Coast, where Blue Origin and NASA and all these companies are building rockets by the dozens to send to wherever. We call it the space race here. Is we are building here, and companies are coming here, and we are building the future here now. And I feel like, um, there is like an anti-inflation act or something that is helping with that. I can't really speak too much on it, but I know it touches on this specific thing, and I urge people to look that up.
You're speaking to
And
the I think it was the deal that Biden worked out with the EV companies. It's like EV
that's right.
companies, it's like additional infrastructure on top of
Yeah,
something to do with the plant, the Intel plant in, I believe it's Ohio, I believe,
yeah.
and
I
then
have
yeah, touching on aerospace capabilities, that kind of thing.
exactly. For example, I even wrote here. I have to look for it. Hold on one second. The semiconductor fabrication plants,
Right.
right? As we saw, this is touching on what we, China has a lot of intellectual property. They have, but what people's perspective is on China is very propagandized. It's not really what's going on. I feel like they've painted China as a big bad wolf, but the United States is the big bad wolf of the world. Let's not get it twisted. That's just a fact. And we
Well,
are
but
now,
to speak on what you were speaking on before, like I remember being like we call ourselves the big bad wolf, so to speak. But like you were saying, I remember how unprepared we were for COVID and the ponchos and the rags that we had to cover our mouths with for lack of PPE, and
right,
I just remember thinking this can't be possible for the country we live in,
me
and
too.
what we how we see ourselves in the grand scheme of this world. Like we can't be this ill prepared for this kind of catastrophe. I just found it amazing at that time. 2020 was a wild year. It really opened a lot of
Yeah,
people's eyes up to, how how we kind of dropped the ball for the most part. Yeah.
Oh, we didn't even we didn't even have the ball. We didn't have the ball. We the ball was in another court, and we were like, "Where's the ball?" That was the United States with COVID. We and I feel like there were other countries that maybe did do a little bit better, but I think we all struggled to prepare for something as crazy as this is. I mean, look at China now. China is under a grave emergency.
It was definitely
There
global.
are
It was a global struggle. Like no one knew what was
right,
coming. They didn't know how to handle it.
and China is actually going through their pandemic now. In the past couple of months, China has been in grave trouble, losing thousands by the day. I mean, they even predicted 1.5 million dying from the COVID emergency they're going through. And none of us were prepared. But here in the United States, the most alarming because yeah, we think we're good, but I don't know how good we were. I definitely don't. I think there are a portion of the population that did well. They have resources, but the working class and people in the deep neighborhoods of America, the working class people and the people who struggle with poverty were in a lot of trouble.
So we saw the impact from COVID. We saw how ill prepared we were. And Andreessen cites, I believe, four key sectors that we could improve on. I believe it's housing, school or education, manufacturing, and I believe it's
Wanted to say it was infrastructure or something like that. I'm not sure.
yeah, transportation. Transportation.
Oh, got it.
And we see what's going on with that with these derailments, like the the
Yeah.
so what of all those four, which sector would you like zoom in on and say this is what we need to touch on first if we're going to get started in this way?
Okay. So we have education,
Hmm.
transportation.
Hmm.
Um,
Housing,
what were the other two? Sorry. Housing.
and
Housing's a big
then
one.
believe it's manufacturing.
Manufacturing.
Hmm.
I'm writing them down because I want to number them and
In
what I
order,
think is the number of importance.
right?
So I would say housing is a big one. Quality of life, basic rights, basic human rights. This is where we get really, really radical, really Bernie bro like, and we're talking about housing is a human right. I mean, if our people are struggling, they're hungry, they're cold, they're hot, they're thirsty, they're homeless, jobless. That is a demise of a human being. There has been so much data, and you personally and me personally, we know, we've seen it. You go out to the streets. We've done work on the streets for years, as long as I met you out there through the organizations that we volunteer for. So, shout out to the Shower of Hope. I mean, they've done some really great work all the way back to Monday Night Mission. So we've gotten direct contact with the people who are on the street. And those stories will impact you because those people some of them are college educated, they're professional people who've just fallen on hard times. I mean, there's all kinds of different stories, but at the end of the day, a person on the street for a year, they've just tacked on 10 years of their life. Their health is probably diminishing. Their mental health is absolutely suffering. And it's difficult to grab those people and bring them back to society as a elemental, uh, law-abiding, tax-paying member of society who is productive. It's very difficult to bring that person back. And so there is so much waste to resource that comes from that, but it goes down to the foundation of housing. We need to help people, bring them back in, and get our people back to work. And worry less about these basic human right problems that we see so prevalent now in the United States. I mean, there's so many people that are homeless, and I mean, Los Angeles is a great problem, but it's all over the country too. Definitely over the country. So I believe housing is a major issue, because if we get our people healthy, if we get our people housed or working, we could get them productive, and it just helps. It helps keep the chaos under control.
And then what would you put as number two?
Number two, education. And this one's very interesting because education is changing. I mean, let's just get right into it. ChatGPT is changing university
Right.
right now.
Right.
AI is changing our society in this very moment. It's getting smarter. Less jobs are
I'm a
being
little bit
occupied by
I'm a little
people.
bit terrified of it, but at the same time, I'm a little bit excited by it. Like the possibilities.
Me too.
Yeah.
The possibilities are crazy. I've already been reading up on it. I've used it a little bit, and I think it's an interesting turn of events. This feels something to be excited and, of course, fear a little bit. We've seen the movies. If you listen to Elon Musk and everything he says, he was warning us about AI years ago, right? And so, but he is one of the main people pushing AI. So let's not get it twisted. He's a big investor in that. And so, education, I think we need to rethink it, man. I think old school brick and mortar, I have friends personally who have changed the way their kids are educated. They're bringing them home. They're online programs. It's like go at your own pace type of education. And a lot of people are being homeschooled. As a matter of fact, people are being homeschooled more than ever in history right now. And I don't know the number, but it's a big percentage, and it's a historic percentage actually. And all that happened because of the pandemic.
Yeah,
Some people, that stuff really worked.
we actually went
Staying
to
home
homeschool
really
for a
worked.
bit. Like when if it eventually does happen, it's the numbers are not looking good for public schools. It's not. It's an
No.
outdated way. When kids can come home and learn more on YouTube than they can in the classroom, that's kind of a problem. It's a problem. It's like,
Hey,
what are
man.
we actually teaching them? You know? Yeah.
Well, I mean, people like you and myself and many of the people that we know that understand how that curriculum, that public curriculum was set, right? The foundation of the education system in America, which still is in that structure, so to speak, get a bunch of people in a classroom, give them periods of the day, learning certain subjects, all the ringing the bell and the going from here to here and coming to school and wearing a uniform, blah, 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 all that stuff is no longer necessary to be educated, right? That is all like population control and setting them up for the workforce. And
Right.
yeah, I think the time to be able to learn what I feel like there are basics that you teach a child and a young person. But I think at some point, I mean, I know my 9 and 8-year-old nephews already have interesting brains, and it's really interesting to see how they're developing at such a young age because they have channels like the internet, YouTube, and all these things where they're like, oh, I like this. I'm just going to watch 8 hours of this or 5 hours of this. And they're going to be like
Absorb all that
making,
content. Right. Yeah.
right. And I
Yeah.
mean, listen, I'm 42.
Mhm.
Okay. I've been in a few industries, but now I'm in the aerospace industry. And like 4 or 5 years ago, I'd been talking to my best friend, tell me more about his job. And he was talking to me about machining, being a machinist, a CNC machinist is what they call it. Computer numerically controlled machine. It's like the reverse of what a 3D printer is, except we work with metal, brass, aluminum, steel, and we make parts for all kinds of different things. And so I started researching it on YouTube, and I started learning CAD, something I could do on the internet. And here I am 4 years later. I was very intimidated back then because I had no knowledge. I didn't know anything about the world. And even watching content, I was like, holy cow, that looks really complex. But the more I learned and would come to Florida and I'd come to the shop and he'd show me certain things and started learning little by little. And here I am. I'm actually doing it now. It's like, this is my life. And I have no formal training for it. I am an apprentice at a shop who is now taking me through the course, which is about 2 years of a apprenticeship that I have to do. But I am at least have this elemental foundational knowledge that I learned online, where so many different people can literally guide you through what a process is of cutting a piece of metal and learning the X, Y, and Z axis, right? We're called XYZ. That's the name of the company, but it's literally that geometry. It's X, Y, and Z on a machine, right? And this is the kind of mathematical axis that we work with. And so that was kind of nerve-wracking because it's like, oh, shoot, it's math, but there's so much information and there's so many different people that are teaching it. You just got to find your style. And now these kids have that times a million instead of just one set way that they teach it for years. And we're way beyond that now. The system needs to get rethunk because it's not working.
And that speaks to the value of trade school, like
Yes.
informing kids about trade school possibilities versus just like that pipeline to institutions like college institutions, higher learning, so
Great
to
point.
speak.
Yes.
Um,
Great point.
but what's interesting is what a lot of teachers will say is that they're not actually able to teach what they want to teach. I remember my
Right.
oldest sister, she was teaching English in Fauché a while ago. And she actually just burnt out because she was trying to teach them creative thinking and poetry and all these ways to get them to actually express themselves at the age that they were. But there's like this demand for all these like standardized test preps and all these ways that companies have come in and there's like this standardized curriculum that they have to learn for these end exams that they have to take. And everything you do in the classroom is geared towards preparing them for that exam rather than creatively structuring a lesson plan that will have
Right.
them develop in the best way for them.
Right.
So that's what
I've
a lot
heard
of
this
teachers will,
complaint.
yeah, that's what a lot of teachers will tell you. So it's like, and their feet are being kind of pressed to the fire in that way, and they can't really veer off and do exactly what they want to do.
Right.
And that's what's
Yeah. And
contributing to the failure in the K through 12 system.
absolutely. And I mean, to add to that, and those are all great points, Kevin. I mean, you hit really the most elemental foundational points of a fractured system. And just to add to that is we're using education to politicize it. And that's just like such failure, man. And so there's so many things going on. Now more than ever, kids feel the least bit safe in their schools. That's a political problem. It's a legislative problem. There are many ways we could really break that down. I mean, that's like a whole nother episode. But whatever it is, if you look at where we stand, I mean, we're on many lists and not doing well on those lists. But education-wise, when it comes to science, math, we're not doing well, and that's problematic. And give or take, I don't think video games and I don't think tech is bad by any sense of the word. I think it's addictive. I think, I'm not a parent, so
I mean, all things in moderation, I would say. Yeah.
Right,
You know.
exactly. And I mean, data says that playing video games is actually not necessarily all that bad for the brain. But these kids can get addicted. I know I see my nephews play, and I could see some patterns there, even in them.
Like, I mean,
But
we're all a
we have,
generation of gamers. I think we've critical thinking, just pure
yes,
mechanics, that kind of sharp
right.
sort of puzzle solving. I think
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
valuable. Depends on how you look at it. Yeah, but yeah,
Exactly. And,
continue.
eh, but it's also, it goes back to that idea of instead of teaching children things that are boring them and that are not necessarily concepts that they're going to literally grasp right now, let's start developing what it is that they're good at. Let's try to make these kids be in a happy, safe environment. Let's try that. I think that is important. I think the mood and the behavior in which a kid demonstrates at school is extremely connected to their ability to stay focused, to learn. And so, these are the types of things that we need to really dive deep about. I mean, if we really want to teach information that is going to help not just that child and that kid growing up, but we also want to build a foundation for a productive, great member of our society who is going to not only help their lives thrive, but also help our country thrive. I think these are the kind of roots that we have to really dive deeper in for sure.
All right. What do you think it would take for a majority of the population to realize that we need to build, like we need to come back to that building spirit? Because I think a lot of us are still very much in consumption mindset, and production isn't high on top of the list of. And when they think production, they think grueling menial jobs that don't really satisfy their soul, in that
Right.
way. So like what how would we get people to come back to that building mindset? Or is that even possible? Is that just, has that chapter left us?
Man, I don't know. I'd like to be more, I'm one of those, I am a try to look at life logically and very realistically. Excuse me. But I'd like to be more hopeful than that. I like to be more optimistic. There's still some optimism. I think we have a chance if the, it goes back to the Bernie Sanders and his message. It's all about the people. It really is all about the people. My that there's one thing I have learned, especially embedding myself in the progressive movement since 2015 and going out there and knocking on doors and talking to people and just getting to know um, uh, this kind of mindset of let's do it for the people. Now it's not always perfect, but I think if we stay connected to that one foundation, if we band together, we could really see what is possible. We were so close. It was such a great group that banded together for one idea, right? And we all wanted to make we wanted just to make ourselves and our lives better here in the United States, and I think it's very possible. So how do we get people's desire to build? Oh, let's keep talking to each other. I think we have. I don't want to get too contentious because I don't want to get too like finger pointy, right? Because it's
I
annoying
mean,
and nobody has time
if
to
that's
do that.
if that's where you're moving, let's do it. I mean, why not?
Well, we've done a great job at dividing ourselves, and I think that has created a lot of turmoil within us as a people. And so we're so divided. Everybody's thinking in so many different ways. Very individualistic time. We are super into consumption right now, and it's like consuming what it is that we're consuming. I'm not really sure, but desire to build. I think we need to be able to somehow get back to square one and making ourselves happy, healthy. Make sure we're healthy. Make sure we're happy. See, it has a lot to do with survival. We're in like a survival mode. And when we're placed in that survival mode, it's very difficult to stay calm. I know single dads and single moms are just struggling out there. So they're not thinking about anything except surviving.
Also,
Oh, I got to feed my kids.
for you that desire to build starts at like the human level, like the just pure Maslow hierarchy of needs sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Interesting to me.
I love that you mentioned that. I use that as an example quite a lot, right? And so we have very few people at the very top of that pyramid. I have some data actually that I could share. So the richest 26 people on the planet hold more wealth than the bottom 50% of the world combined. That is a major problem to me. That means we're talking about billions of people in the world struggling. And so while in the United States, we can't compare ourselves and our poverty with third world countries. If anybody's been to Syria, where kids are fighting for one bottle of water, they're literally violent. I know people who have served there in the military recently, and we were talking about their experiences, and they said, man, Sebastian, let me tell you, every time we go abroad, every time they send us to a different country, my brother-in-law is in Mongolia right now, and my friend was like, I threw a bottle of water at this kid, and I saw a bunch of kids get violent for a bottle of water. So we need to understand that we are in a good place here in the United States, but then when you hear stats like that, and then you see poverty levels here in America, people living on the street, where that does not have to happen here. It really doesn't. We have the ability to make the country, the world, a really better place, as corny as it sounds. But that's where it starts, man. That's really where it starts. We got to get back to the message of let's help each other. Let's be less consumptuous. Let's be less greedy. Let's get back to ourselves, because we have the ability to make it a greater place. Now, some people may think that's some pipe dream, sea bass. The time has passed, and you're very optimistic in that. And a lot of people are pessimistic when it comes to that. But I think it's possible. We just gotta talk to people and show them the way. That's something I'm doing here in Florida,
No,
because I'm
it's definitely possible. Um, it's definitely possible, and it's needed. You speak about the financial elite, and then when we think about the public sector as well, I know we mentioned education and we mentioned housing, but like
yeah.
in terms of manufacturing and transportation, like do you
Well,
think the public sector
yeah. Give me
is
one
used?
sec. So sorry.
Oh,
One sec. So sorry.
is your audio?
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So mentioning the financial elite, and then thinking about the just the nation's government, the public sector. Um, when we mentioned housing and we mentioned education, but when it comes to manufacturing and transportation, do you think the public sector is useful to the nation, or should it be restructured from the ground up? Like, is it where are we now, in your opinion, in terms of those two sectors?
Transportation and manufacturing. Well, I mean, let's look at transportation. So the United States has a great advantage over how we transport our goods. We have many different options in how we do that. The best way for us to do that, and best way we do that at a low cost, is we use our waterways, right? We have geographically the best position in probably the whole world. It's a lot cheaper send things around the country and around the world, obviously by water than by truck. But let's talk about what's going on with the trains. Who knows what's going on there? It's pretty interesting. It's definitely really weird. I haven't done too much digging, but I know that, man,
Well, to catch people up,
how, how many?
there have been just there was one just today in, I
Right.
believe, is it Nebraska? But there, yeah, I think it's Nebraska. But there have been um, four so far. So those, or is it three? It's there's three. It's three. So there was one. The biggest one is Ohio. That's the one with the chemical spill. The chemical spill
Palestine.
that
Yeah.
became aerosolized and is now, you
Right.
know, flowing into the Ohio River, and it's in the air, affecting air quality. You know, Norfolk Southern um, hired their own EPA analysts to claim that it's
Horrible.
safe to go back to their houses. You know, um, and now all these people are falling sick. Pets are dying. You know, it's getting pretty sad out there, and people are making a big.
Right.
I mean, the whole partisan whiplash is starting to happen, which is always going to happen.
Right.
But we should be talking about the real thing. And then there's one that happened, I believe, in Texas, and then this latest one today. But it all speaks to this
Right.
failing infrastructure around us. You know, that's not, you know, attention is being placed on it. And one of the things about
I
that I
mean,
feel is the most deceiving is that, like, a lot of Republicans are saying that the Biden administration isn't putting much attention on infrastructure out there, but they were the ones fighting against the Build Back Better initiative, which is like, it's
right.
partisanship is really ruining this country. But what's your take on it?
Well, the whole train derailment is really interesting. But if you get right down to it, I mean, there you go. That I think it's very easy when you follow the money, right? And so, why our rail system is so old school, it's because oil money. I mean, these companies, these corporations, who are definitely have many politicians in their pocket. Lobbying is crazy. There's like two, three lobbyists per politician. It's pretty insane how much money is being thrown around in DC. So, we got to keep people using their cars and using gas. We got to keep people on planes because why build a monorail? Why build a train that's going to go from Los Angeles to Las Vegas in an hour and a half? Why? When we could just have everybody keep driving on our roads. It's all about it's really about money. If you ask me, a lot of it has to do with money. So I think we've had these projects on the table, and I mean they could be definitely privatized. I think Elon Musk is doing some kind of underground railroad. I mean, some train. I don't remember
Oh,
exactly what
the
it's doing,
high
but
speed rail from
Hyperloop or something like
think
that.
it's like San Diego to San Francisco, something like that. Yeah, but
Yeah,
these trains weren't purely transportation though. These ones were cargo trains too. It's like
right,
it for me it speaks to the whole idea behind the rail strike that was happening a while ago. It's like these workers have been demanding time off, you know, more staff so they can catch these things uh, before they escalate to this kind of situation, and more investment in the company in the rails, the systems themselves, the infrastructure. So it's like, um yes, lobbying interests, oil interests for in terms of energy, but like just pure blockage from, or what the word that Marc Andreessen used is regulatory capture. So making sure that
yes,
policy can't be in place so that these companies can profit more on the lack
exactly,
of safety precaution regulation. You know, there's less they have to spend in regulation and making sure things are up to code, and so that means more money in their pockets. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
No, I agree. And that's great that you brought that up. I remember him using that term. I think it's one thing I forgot to write down, but it's great that you brought that up. That's very important. I mean, it all has to do with legislation and look, these corporations are spending little money to move things around the country, and now what's going to happen, right? This whole thing seems like it's a downward spiral from here. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Um, but yeah, as far as transportation is concerned, uh, I mean, we could talk about EVs, right? That's a whole other thing. I mean, the infrastructure on EVs, there's a big EV boom,
And the
and that all
manufacturing too.
started
The manufacturing of the
absolutely.
yeah semiconductors and all that. Yeah.
And I mean, and listen, that all started. Which listen, China has a great hold on the EV industry. Okay, probably a good in the 90th percentile. We get a lot from them. China owns Congo. They own cobalt. What is in your cell phone? What is in your EV? It's all cobalt. Look into what's happening in the Congo and cobalt mining. Let me tell you, it's the saddest thing you'll ever hear and see in your life when you see what's going on over there. Just to get cobalt so we could power our tech. It's a real disaster. And luckily, people like Elon Musk are trying to look into different ways to harness energy. And, right. I mean, and listen, it's about how we're going to get our energy, right? Still to this day, and this is something that he talks about in his letter, in his essay. And he talks about building nuclear plants, right? So we're talking about building. This is infrastructure. I mean, the core of this letter is the lack of infrastructure that we have. And, the desire the people have to have come together and ask for these things. We have the power to do that. We have the power to do that. Um, it's going to be hard, and it's going to take a lot of money, plain and simple. It's not cheap. Nothing is cheap, right? And nothing is free. Everything is tax dollars, right? Why people? I think more people need to get ignited, man. More people. This is where I'm going to get passionate, right? This is a good segue because we have the power and the desire to build, but we need to go band together and ask is no more, man. We have to demand. We have to literally demand in the most peaceful way possible. We're not going to January 6th the government. That's like a horrible plan, man. So we learned our lesson. We saw it happen. But we need to peacefully band together, left, right, center, progressives. We need to stop the division, come together, and demand for what is ours. This is going to get me on a big one, man. The Pentagon budget, right? Our American budget is about $25 trillion. The Pentagon budget, damn near half that, man. Right? They accounted for $7 trillion, but about 61% is unaccounted for. This is like the fifth time the Pentagon has a congressionally mandated audit and they fail. They're the only government organization that has this record.
It's
This
crazy
is our
that there's
tax dollars.
not. It's crazy that there's not a bigger like uproar about that. It's like how
Brother,
how 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 do we just let them slide twice, right? They failed this audit.
this is the fifth time now that they failed this
Oh,
budget audit.
the fifth time.
Fifth. And
Wow.
let's not forget, the day before 9/11, Rumsfeld went on and was talking about how a big problem we have in America. This is 9/11. This is back in 2001, 22 years ago. The day before 9/11, he was talking about how we couldn't account for about I don't remember what the figure was, but now it's $9 trillion. 61% of their budget is unaccounted for. That, man, if that doesn't make you get up and get upset, I'm not talking about peanuts, man. I'm talking about our tax dollars in the tune of almost half of our American budget is gone. That is insane, man.
But
That
we
I
can't pay
can't
for
wrap my arms around that.
we can't pay for Medi-Cal for all though.
We don't have it. We don't have it. We don't have money.
We don't have the money.
We don't have it at
It's
all.
not anywhere.
We have zero. And so I think when you take this information to a Republican, to a Biden Democrat, to a Bernie bro, to a Bernie fan, and he talks about this all the time, man. But we're the radicals, right? But when you take this information, you lay it out straight out and simple. This is no longer a left-right issue. This isn't no civil political battle, man. This is us standing up for what we live for here in the United States. If you're going to take chunks of my paycheck out, and then you're going to tell me once a year that you can't account for that much money, no way, Jose, man. Like, let's go. We need to get together and understand things like Citizens United. That's cancer, man. That's a political corporate cancer. That is a marriage we have got to divorce. We have got to break that up. More people need to talk about things like Citizens United, corporate money, and public elections of these politicians, right? So we can talk about all this stuff.
No, that's actually a good segue. That's actually a good segue.
It all ties together.
Right. Do you think it's possible to get money out of politics, or is it just like part of our culture now? Is it so ingrained that we just can't do the deed?
I don't think so, man. I mean, that's what it feels like that right now. But I think it's a possible thing. We just need to educate more people. We need to talk about it more. We need to shove it down people's throats. You know, the beautiful thing that's happening now, the beautiful thing that's happening now is the independent media and the regular individual, you, myself, people who are getting on the horn, people who are doing research, diving deep into the information that's out there, putting it out to the world, having conversations, right? Independent media is now booming. We have people like Breaking Points. We have, this is contentious, but listen, Joe Rogan interviews some of the most amazing people. He brings people in for long conversations that are mind bursting, brother. That, people from all walks of life of the United States, farmers, physicists, geologists, and the whole gamut. He's got economic global economists. He's got scientists, and they're telling us exactly what's going on with all these facets of the world. He's got people who work for these big conglomerates. He's got people like Elon Musk telling us exactly what's coming when it comes to tech, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to technology, when it comes to all the innovation that's happening, but also what's not working here in the United States. So, he's got people from the pharmaceutical industry giving everybody the P's and Q's on how the healthcare system is a real scam, man. It's a real scam. You know what I'm saying? So, you've got some prostate cancer medicine that is made in the UK for very cheap. I think it's like a couple $100 that you can buy it there. And here they're selling that for like 30 grand. It's an insane it's an insane scam. Right. So we've got all these things that we have to fight and look at very deeply and understand that. I love that when they were calling for a whole full stop. Now, if we could get 1 million, 2 million people to just stay home for a month, get your resources right, get your stuff together, stay home for a month, do that a couple times. I mean, it's going to show everybody what's going to happen. We have the control. We just have to take control back. So I think it's important to understand that, yes, I am optimistic that we could get money out of politics. We just have to educate people on that kind of stuff.
Speaking of the drug prices, I believe it's Mark Cuban. He has a drug
Yeah.
company out right now that is like specifically like slashing the price of like insulin and other much needed drugs on the market right now. And it's the whole idea behind it is like we're seeing this. I mean, there's the whole idea of like not relying on a billionaire savior or whatever. But the fact that he's actively out there, actively uh, incentivizing, or not incentivizing, but paving the way for richer players to make inroads in this pharmaceutical field to make sure that people get the drugs they need at a reasonable price is, I think, commendable. And I remember people were floating his name around as like a possible candidate to combat Donald Trump, or I would like to see I would honestly like to see what a Mark Cuban presidency would look like, or a Mark Cuban candidacy. That would be very interesting. I would want to see what he would run on, and that kind of thing. But
Yeah, it would be
that would be an
interesting.
interesting rebuttal to Donald Trump. But yeah, I think just the worst thing about money in politics is how someone with enough money can stack Congress and the Senate for their own gain, you know? I mean, we see what was happening. I mean, he wasn't successful because he got cut, but we saw what was happening with Sam Bankman-Fried. He was
Oh
actively
man.
actively donating to both sides of the aisle to get
Yeah.
to just to
Yeah.
make sure that whoever came into power would take care of his interests, you know?
But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. He was donating to the Democrats. We know that big time. But he was doing that on paper. How he was donating to the Republicans, off paper, off book, because he didn't want the press to press him on that. Because he didn't want to be labeled, right? And he didn't want that narrative to be out on him. So it's really interesting how shady all that went down. Man, what a shady situation. Wow.
Yeah, and they're still we're still I don't think that it's any of that those details are released, but I particularly want to know who he was donating to. We know on the Democratic side who was giving to this Maxine Waters, uh, Maxwell Frost said that he initially received his contribution, but commendably he sent it back right after, because
Wow.
when all the news broke, he was like, "Yeah, we have received funds from him, but we're not going to keep it because of our stance." Uh, um, I believe Yang was previously trying to get funding from him before all that went down, and then he was just like, "Yeah, I'm glad we we didn't take any of that," you know. So I'm looking forward to the list of Republicans, the dark money donations. You know, I want to see who's running their mouth when uh, they are clearly participating in the same kind of illicit behavior that their counterparts
Right.
on the other side are doing. You know.
Exactly. Oh, I think it's one giant pull party up there, man, in DC. I think they do a great job at making it sound like them versus the other. But man, I'll tell you, uh, yeah, they're all in cahoots, man. That's what I think, anyway. It's my opinion. Um, and it's it's incredible, man. And so I think people just need to, you know, care a little more and not just pass on, what's politics have to do with me? I don't know, man. It has everything to do with you. It's got everything to do with your thriving in this country, your neighbor. It's got a lot to do with everything. And we need to maybe just come back and care a little more about our neighbor, about our neighborhood, about our state, and about our country. I mean, it really matters because it's when we're like this all day long scrolling, things are happening, and that's where they want you. They want you as confused, full of information that's coming from propaganda sites, and they want you feeling up on stuff that is not what they're doing. And so I think all that kind of stuff is extremely important to realize that they want you very busy because they're up to no good. They don't want to get caught. But it's like the market manipulation that's happening in DC. You know what I mean? It's like these people are literally being the market. They're making who knows how much money they're making, right? But
Shout
they
out to
are
Unusual Whales for that, by the way, keeping track of all that. It's pretty fascinating to see which Congress members are just cleaning up. Because I invest myself, but like I wonder how successful I would be if I had like you know
a tad
inside
of information.
knowledge,
Come on,
inside
come on,
knowledge. If
come
they
on.
know exactly what's
You
going to
know,
happen.
you dabble in that world, man. Can you imagine just getting some tips an hour before something's gonna burst? I mean, come on, man. It's just insane. That really that really should be something to
It,
get people real mad.
it's not even
You know?
fair to think about when you think about that, the kind of edge you could have, like you think about the insider trading that goes on inside firms alone or hedges, and that's not even close to the kind of information that could happen at the level where a lobbyist is, hey, just so you know, that regulation that you passed into law for us is going to kick in about t minus 2 hours. Maybe
Yep.
someone might be interested in that, and then one quick call to your broker, and you beat the market by 200%. Just that
I mean,
easily,
that's crazy.
that easily. That
That
easily.
easy. It's like somebody filling out your SAT test lightly before it's your turn to fill it in. I mean, come on, man. Life changer. It's a life changer. These guys are up there making millions of dollars. It's, I don't know. I think about that and it's angering. It definitely makes you angry.
Yeah, there's
And
a lot. There's a lot of freshmen. I don't know about the freshmen, but there are a lot of newer Congress members, and just the people in general are pushing for that stock ban. So we'll see what happens with that this
yeah,
year. Yeah.
I don't remember where I heard this, but I heard that I don't know if it was a State of the Union speech or whatever speech, there was a line written for Joe Biden on that particular issue. And somehow it was taken off, so he would never talk about it.
Oh,
But they were
really?
talking about,
He mentioned something
yeah,
about that though. He mentioned it. I think he
he
mentioned
mentioned
that.
it.
He
And then
mentioned a lot of things that surprised me. I don't know if I don't know how truthful he is around what he's actually going to do, but a lot of that State of the Union speech really surprised me. I was like, oh my goodness, who is this guy? You know?
right,
Yeah.
he was feeling good. They gave him the good juice that day.
Yeah.
Man, it's like I get upset, man, when I think about Bernie because I still see him thriving. You know, guess his heart, his good old heart, just beats away even more strong than ever, man. Everybody was so worried that he was old and he was gonna die because of his heart thing. But look at him
The
now.
stint. He has
Boom.
a stint.
He has a stint. It's terrible. We can't have him. We can't feel safe that something's gonna happen to him. Man, that guy is good. He's doing well. It just reminds me of his idea of taking a penny from every speculative trade, and that the way he laid that out was so good. And to this day, I feel like that idea holds because, and, and it just almost reaffirms what's going on with the stock manipulation in DC. It's like they know that idea would work. They know that's how we would pay for a lot of things. If say we didn't have to rely on the $9 trillion the Pentagon has lost, right? And we were just literally trying to find the funds for us to pay for these things that we need for the country. This would be a great idea to do it. This would be a great idea. But there's no money, Kev. We can't do it. There's no money. There's none. Zero.
So is building for you, do you think building is the answer to the revival of the American dream? Or do you think that's just dead in the water?
No, I think it's imperative. I think it's an imperative position that we must take. I think now more than ever, we are positioned in a great way. And it has to be the way. We have to build. We have a lot of infrastructure to catch up on. We were talking about EVs, and see, where did I have my notes? I mean, right off the bat, we're about a decade behind in the infrastructure to where we are like gas stations, right? In order to power all the EVs that we have on the road. And so the infrastructure is not there, but we're working on it. I think continuing to focus on green energy. Solar, we're also on their infrastructure. We're really lacking on how to harness and contain the energy we're creating through solar so that we can sustain people at night when the sun isn't blasting. So we have this stored energy. We're still struggling on the storage of the energy. But wind is making a real presence. They're building a lot of infrastructure in the wind industry, so that's really good for us to harness energy. I think it has a lot to do with energy. Everything takes energy, things take water. Nuclear plants require time, a lot of money, but nuclear energy is still the best way for us to harness energy and continue powering ourselves. And the one good thing about the United States is we definitely rule in energy production. We produce and export a lot of food. And it's really interesting what's going on, with the
Well, nuclear could be a burgeoning industry, but I think there's still a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear around it. I mean, we take the nuclear
yeah,
scares that are happening between us and Russia. Like just the fear alone,
right.
and then the ICBMs that North Korea has. But people can't get away from using them as weapons, which is understandable, and think about wrap their heads around using them for harnessing energy, just and the sheer amount of power we could generate if we were to
Oh
to
yeah,
you know disarm most of our warheads and transfer them to power plants to sustain our energy. It's there's still a lot of
absolutely.
fear. There's still a lot of fear around that.
I mean, listen, we can either stay in the fear or stay on the ground with facts, right? There is enough nukes just between the United States, Israel, and Russia to go ahead and destroy the solar system. So the fear is what it is, man. We're a people who have been using nuclear weapons for a long time. Luckily, no more have been used since those fateful days in Japan. And I think we are now trying to get out. Military industrial complex is a big, big issue. Obviously, we can talk about this. It's directly tied to the Pentagon budget. But I don't necessarily, to be honest, fear that even a person as crazy as we think he is, Putin, or I don't know him. I don't know what he's going to do. They make him seem real crazy. They make the North Korean Prime Minister, President Kim Jong-un seem super crazy and that his finger's on the button, right? But I feel like our finger's on the button. We have like over 6,000 nukes just between three countries. Come on, man. I think if proper power plants are built, I think it's definitely a way for us to continue to be the leading force on energy production. Who knows what's going to happen with Russia and Ukraine with this war going on? Russia is still a big exporter of food and energy, but who knows what's going to happen now? That pipeline that accident or somehow had explosions in the sea, that got burst. Who knows what's going on there? So there's just a lot of weird things going on in the world, but building is essential. Building is the way to bring us around and be self-sufficient, regardless of how we see it. What's going on in China? China is a country that is falling deep into a demise right now in this for about the next decade, we're going to see China struggle. They've just been caught basically lying about their population numbers by over 100 million. This is, if you think about it, this is around the time they had that one child policy. So they've been lying about their population. There's more people in their 60s and 50s than there are in their 40s and 30s and 20s. That's a big problem. That means it's an aging population. They're not going to have the labor. Mexican labor is now more powerful than the Chinese labor, and it costs less. And moving forward, and this is some Trump policies, right? The trade policies that Trump actually laid out with Mexico during his tenure as president, it's the same policy. They just won't tell you, right? We can't tell the people that the Democrats are actually using that same layout that President Trump laid out. But we are making Mexico our most powerful trading partner, and it will continue to be that way. Their labor is better, their labor is younger, it's cheaper, and they're right next door. That relationship is important. If you look beyond, build the wall. In the past 2 months, man, we've allowed almost 400,000 people to come across our borders. As much as I feel like I want to be for immigration, and I feel like there is a positive to having people come to our country and becoming citizens, I think that infrastructure is very, very messed up. And obviously, I'm not for building walls and all that stupid jargon talk that people ate up so hard on the Republican side, which is insane to me. I do feel like on the underground, Trump was actually laying out some great business plans for our trading partners in Mexico, right? And so,
I mean, there's a reason
show,
Biden's still using his most of his trade tariffs. He was
yeah,
the first president to actually get down into the weeds with China and actually call them out on a lot of their intellectual property theft and the way they were trying to screw over our farmers. So he was the first
exactly,
president to actually get into that with them. Yeah.
exactly. And that's the thing. See, we got too caught up on what mainstream media was telling us, and digging deep. I mean, Trump is a businessman through and through. I don't like the man, but when you look at what he's doing on a logical sense and business wise, as far as how we are doing business with China, China may
I do
have,
wish he was a bit more populist, but yeah, you can continue. Yeah, continue.
yeah, but he is one of those greedy billionaires, and he's just all about himself and his buddies, right? So he's the guy who's just as corrupt as any of them, man, and we're seeing it all. But how he was trying to help the nation come back to itself, manufacturing here, bringing the power back to the United States. He's really doing it. And, now that you see what's going on with China, they may have an astounding intellectual property portfolio. They don't have the labor or the youth to understand how to operate. They have these microchip fab warehouses and buildings that they have all this technology in, but they don't know how to actually operate it, right? So they have major issues, contentious issues that really they prop themselves up as these major players, but they're really not. Their population is suffering. They're dying by the thousands because of these viruses that are now hitting them, right? Their vaccines didn't work. They had to use a Western style vaccine. Their hospital system is low grade. They don't have a very regional care system, healthcare system. So that's extremely bad for them. They have high diabetes, high hypertension, very unhealthy people as a whole. There's a lot of overweight people in China. So China is not like this major player
Sounds kind of like
and this
us,
major
actually.
threat. Well, they say that China is suffering from the American and Indian, they're both cultures worst of their worst, right? They have a mixture of that. They're unhealthy. Their air quality is horrible. They're overpopulated. And let's talk about their government, which is a huge failure. I mean, we're spying deep into China, into their own I don't know what they're calling their parliament house or whatever you call it. I don't know our version of the Capitol, but we're
Yeah, I
spying deep
I
inside that
forget what they
place.
call it. It's kind of like the British parliamentary system, but there's key differences because it's not traditional democracy. Or it's not a traditional republic. It's like yeah, it's
Right.
strange setup, but it's
It's a
mostly
totalitarian.
yeah. It's like most of it is for show, like rubber stamping. But the person
Right.
who's at the head is the head of the CCP. That's pretty much how it goes. But I was interested, like,
Exactly.
so you're in the aerospace field. Do you see like is what's going on with China, like the supply chain, is that impacting you at work?
No, we do. There are very minimal products that we would necessarily order for our field from China. But what we have come in contact with is obviously it takes a lot of time. In our field is like a very quick turnaround. We need a tool or we need some kind of a metal or something. We can't wait a month. And they're literally charging us triple to what we could do here for possibly a lower quality material. And so for us in our field, it doesn't really, especially because of where we are and the kind of machine shop that we are, we can almost create anything that we would need if we have to in house. And that is the beauty about working in a machine shop and working with CNC. It's a beautiful field. We can create anything we need out of metal. Just get a chunk of metal and turn it into whatever you need. And that is the beauty of what we do. But as far as how I see it, we do a lot of government contracts. I've gotten to really take a look at the kinds of weekly bid reports that we have. And a lot of the companies are definitely in-house. Companies we're bidding against, the kind of companies that are looking for these things to be made or created or engineered, whatever have you. There are a lot of very locally based companies. So I do see, and let me tell you, man, I looked at one of the bid reports a few weeks ago. It was like almost $200 million just in 1 week of bidding. So there's a lot of money out there being played with. And I feel like where the aerospace industry is going, especially here in Florida, uh, everybody's coming here now because this is where all the major players are. This is where 98% of the rockets are going up from, and it's happening. And growing up in the Space Coast, there's a shuttle that go up every year, maybe twice a year if that was like a lucky break. But now you're talking about rocket blasts. We had, I think, two in one day recently, which is crazy to see two rockets go up in one day. But now we're seeing weekly launches. So there's this huge space boom. And a couple of my friends have just now changed their jobs. Blue Origin is just sucking up so many jobs. This is Jeff Bezos' company. And he's directly competing with SpaceX, and now they're competing for government contracts. NASA is also back in the game, so the government is getting back into it. And when the government starts throwing money at the space industry, something's happening. So we're here, man. We're doing it. I think there's a boom going on. If we could just get somebody who's adventurous and thrilling and want to get that messaging out of like, let's garner our support for people that want to innovate and that want to build here and keep things in the United States, create more jobs. I think that's the kind of energy we need to get behind, and I think it's possible. We just need to get the people together, man. It has to be people powered. It's got to be people powered. We got to take the baton from these corporations who are calling the shots in a legislation that they're creating for these corrupt politicians that they have in their pockets. And I think it's a foundational thing. If we want to build, we can do it, but we got to do it the right way.
So you did a bit of forecasting there. So to kind of wrap up, What's your best assessment of where we're heading in 10 years?
From the people that I take my information from, global economists, people like I want to butcher his name. I wrote it down. Peter Zahan. He's a great guy to research. Man, this guy, I started learning about this guy and I couldn't believe it. I've just read so much about him, things that he's done, where he sees the country and where he sees the world going.
Are you
I,
familiar with
I think,
the realignment? The it's
no,
podcast Sagar and Jetty and um, Marshall Kozlov. He's a regular guest on there. He has a lot of good things to say. Yeah, I know who he is.
the realignment, is that his podcast?
No, it's Sagar and Marshall's podcast, but he's been on there a few times, so I've heard some of
Oh,
his.
okay.
But yeah, we'll continue.
I'm going to have to look it up. Yeah, my broadcast is this next presidential election. Keep thinking about it. We'll see. There's a lot of different things that can happen. I don't know. It just depends, man. I think it all depends. I think if the people, I think foundationally, honestly, even without this presidential election, I think it's important for us in this moment to band together, right? And this is something I talk to all my friends about. It's like, and this is what I learned, right? I lived in Los Angeles 15 years. I was in the military. Now I'm back in home in Florida. And a lot of people are like, you're not gonna have a good time in Florida. It's so different. It's so conservative. It's blah blah blah. Everybody's got their own opinion and their own perspective on how they see the world. But I talk to many friends who are on the right. I know, as you know, so many people who are on the left, Bernie Kratz. I know people who are all about Joe Biden. And when I look at everybody's family situation, this is how my gauge for it, right? I don't go into it from a political perspective. I look at it from a lifestyle perspective. I see how everybody lives, especially if they have children, and I see what their major problems are. A lot of it, everybody is struggling financially. I mean, even people who make a really good, decent wage and they have children, they're struggling, right? Insurance is high. Yeah, I hear some of these prices that people are paying for their family's insurance. It's crazy. Some families can't even afford insurance. It's like, mortgages are growing. The real estate business and the rental prices here, even in Florida, in my hometown where I live, they can compete with LA. And that was something that was very surprising to me. So, everybody is struggling with the same struggles. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. It doesn't matter what you believe. Your struggles are the same struggles. Hard to buy cheap food anymore. You want to stay healthy, but that's hard. Everything has gone up. Fuel's gone up. So we just need to figure out how we're going to basically come together and realize that we need to band together and control what's going on in DC. We got to call for these things. We have to spread the message. Things like Citizens United, getting corporate money out of politics will always be my number one problem with what's going on right now. That is a true cancer that's happening in the United States. And man, we got to stop fueling these wars. These wars are all financial wars. It's all about money. It's all about industry. All this stuff we're
The
sending to the Ukraine, it's for us to innovate.
the MIC
We're
baby,
innovating more weapons.
MIC Military Industrial Complex. They
That's
keep
it.
churning them out, churn them out, churn them out. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. But thank you for coming on to talk about some of these things. I've been wanting to dissect this thing for a while just to talk about some of his ideas. We didn't talk too much about the essay. I was more interested in the ideas he was fleshing out, so we did a really good job on that. Um, yes, it's always a good time talking to you, man. I'm glad you came.
Likewise, man.
Yeah. Any last thoughts? You kind of it felt like you kind of summed up there, but like anything you want to shout out, anything you got going on that you want to let people know about?
What do I got going on? Oh, man, I had a note that I wrote that I wanted to mention. Oh, yeah. Ghislaine Maxwell said Epstein didn't kill himself. Bro, there's no better way to end it. You know what I'm saying? That's my last piece for the night, man. I really appreciate you having me on, Kev. I love you, bro. I respect you, man. I love what you have to say.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
Yeah, man. Yeah, she said it, man. She's allowed to say that, so I'm just saying.
Well, there you have it. There you have it from the man's mouth himself. Once again, Sebastian, it was an honor having you on in the Foxhole. This has been another episode of the Purple's Fox podcast, and this is your host, Kevin C. Eze, once again, signing out.